A son calls his mother from prison. 15 minutes. That's the length of the call. The price for those 15 minutes? $15. That's the same price as a movie ticket for a phone call that costs the provider next to nothing to connect. Multiply that by a mother who wants to hear her son's voice every single week. Multiply it by over 1 million families across the country doing the exact same thing. Now here's the part that should genuinely disturb you. That phone call isn't overpriced by accident. It's not a mistake. It's a business model. One piece of a system that quietly pulls in over $27 billion a year, not from taxpayers, but directly from the pockets of incarcerated people and the families who love them. Phone calls, snacks, soap, labor that pays pennies an hour, fees stacked on fees, charged to people who have no other option and nowhere else to go. This is the prison economy. And once you see how the money actually moves, you'll never look at a phone call the same way again. Let's break it down. The phone call inside most American prisons, there is no free market for phone service. There's one provider chosen through a contract, with zero competition and a captive customer base that legally cannot walk away. Two companies, Viapath and Securus, control roughly 80% of the entire correctional telecom market in the United States. Both are owned by private equity firms, not telecom companies. Private equity, the same kind of investors who buy struggling businesses and squeeze out maximum profit before moving on. A 15-minute call can run as high as $15. Video calls, digital messages, even electronic tablets loaded with basic apps, all priced the same way. Not because the technology is expensive, because the customer has no alternative provider to switch to. The commissary toothpaste, soap, ramen noodles, basic hygiene items that cost $1 or $2 on the outside. Inside, prices routinely run double or triple retail. And here's the catch. These aren't optional purchases. Prison food programs are often so limited that commissary items become a practical necessity, not a luxury. Families end up footing the bill. Nearly $3 billion a year gets spent by families on commissary accounts and phone calls combined, and more than half of those families go into debt just to keep the money flowing. Think about that. Going into debt, on the outside, to pay marked-up prices for soap, for someone who is already locked inside. The labor here's where the story gets even stranger. Nearly 800,000 incarcerated people work jobs behind bars, often producing goods that end up in ordinary supply chains. Almost 70% of them say their wages aren't enough to cover basic necessities. Under the 13th Amendment, forced labor is still technically legal, as long as it's a punishment for a crime. That single clause built an entire $2 billion prison labor industry, running almost entirely on wages measured in cents per hour. The people producing the product rarely see the profit. The companies buying that labor do. The bed count private prison companies don't get paid based on rehabilitation, safety, or outcomes. They get paid per occupied bed. Which means, from a purely financial standpoint, an empty cell is a loss, and a full one is revenue. More people incarcerated equals more profit for the company running the facility, a business model where the incentive points in exactly the opposite direction you'd want it to. Private prison companies pull in roughly $2.4 billion a year just from operating facilities, with a significant share of that tied specifically to immigration detention, one of the fastest-growing corners of the entire industry. The welfare fund. Every prison has something called an inmate welfare fund. Money collected from phone fees, commissary markups, and other charges, supposedly set aside to benefit the incarcerated population directly. In theory, that money funds education programs, recreation, or basic quality of life improvements. In practice, investigations have repeatedly found these funds used more like general slush funds, covering costs the prison system itself should already be paying for. Money taken from people with almost no bargaining power, redirected to plug holes in someone else's budget. The companies. This isn't one villain, it's an entire ecosystem. Telecom companies, commissary vendors, healthcare contractors, food suppliers, bail bond companies. Each one operates in a market with no real competition, a captive customer base, and virtually no ability for that customer to shop around, negotiate, or walk away. One healthcare contractor, among the largest providers of private prison medical services in the country, filed for bankruptcy just last year, even while the broader prison health and commissary industry remains estimated at $80 billion in total scope, an entire economy built around a population that legally cannot say no, so add it all up. Government spending on prisons, jails, probation, and parole in the United States runs past $115 billion a year. On top of that, families and incarcerated individuals themselves pay in an additional $27 billion. Phone calls, commissary, bail premiums, fines, and fees, the system passes directly on to the people it's already holding. That family-paid total is more than 5 times what goes to private prison operators alone, which means the biggest financial burden in this entire system doesn't sit with the government, and it doesn't sit with the corporations. It sits with families who never committed a crime, paying to stay connected to someone who did. A 15-minute phone call, $15, a bar of soap marked up 3 times over, a job that pays cents an hour, built on a legal loophole nearly 160 years old, a welfare fund meant to help, quietly used to help everyone except the people it was named for. None of this happens by accident. Every fee, every markup, every fine is a deliberate business decision, made by a company with a contract, a monopoly, and a customer who has no way to walk away. The system was never designed to explain itself to the families paying into it. But now you know exactly where the money goes, and the question that's still sitting there, unanswered, is the one that should stay with you the longest. If the person locked inside has no choice, and the family on the outside has no choice either, who in this entire system actually does?